the start of the meeting. So we'll just give it those few extra seconds before we get going. Okay, so it is now 1 o'clock. And I will begin by asking Elizabeth Fawcett, our clerk, if she could introduce everyone who is with us today and if there are any regrets.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and through you, we do have our full committee today, save for Ms. Smith. She was briefly here. She hopefully will jump back in, and I see her coming on now. So we have our full committee. Joining us from staff are Ruth Nordegraff, Director of Housing and Social Services, Mitchell Grange, Manager of Housing and Homelessness, and Mohammed Hassan, Manager of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. You have myself, Elizabeth Fawcett, Committee Clerk for this committee, as well as Julia Jansman as our host this afternoon. And currently, we do not have any members of the public in the meeting, but I will update you if we get any, Madam Chair.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, as always. We will now officially call the meeting to order. So we'll begin with the approval of the agenda. Has everybody had a chance to take a look over the agenda? This is a special meeting, so special meeting agenda. And if I could have a first for that. Thank you, Councillor Neal. If I could have a second. Thank you. I saw Ms. Everett. And then all in favor, if you could please show of hands. Thank you. So that carries with unopposed. So we now have the confirmation of minutes on the agenda, but as you will notice, there are no minutes for this special from last meeting for the special meeting. So there are none included here. We will have minutes from our December meeting as well as from this special February meeting at our regularly scheduled next meeting in March. So we will move over to disclosure of pecuniary interest, if there is any. Okay. We will move over to delegations. We have no registered delegations today. And the next is briefings, and we do not have any briefings, but we will move right into our business item A, which is the report of the Chief Administrative Officer that is attached. And I will turn it over to Ruth Nordegraff and Mitchell Grange for a brief introduction to that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. So just to touch on the report you have in front of you briefly. So staff are requesting feedback today on 2 items related to the Housing and Homelessness Committee. The first being the outcomes of the terms of reference review. Second being a review or direction on the pilot Honoraria program for public members. So if you recall back in February 25th of 2021, there was direction to form a working group of 4 committee members and city staff to review the current composition of the terms of reference. So on the June 10th meeting of 2021, that committee was formed, that sub-working group was formed, consisting of Ms. Collier, Councillor Doherty, Ms. White, and Ms. Crete, as well as myself. And we met 5 times throughout the summer and into the fall. Sometimes it was difficult to get on schedule with vacations and whatnot, so it took us into the fall months. And what we have and what we were able to put together was Exhibit A to the report, which is the updated terms of reference, which focuses on a few key areas, one of which being the reporting structure. So in an effort to be more direct and timely on housing and homelessness related matters, we're proposing that instead of reporting through the Arts, Recreation Committee Community Policies Committee, that we report directly through to council. The schedule of the meetings, they're currently set quarterly throughout the year. However, in efforts to increase communication and awareness on housing and homelessness related matters, we're proposing that those meetings shift to a bi-monthly approach. And then we reviewed the composition of the membership. Some of the committees and agencies that were listed in the old mandate or terms of reference were no longer operational. And we wanted to make sure that we increase the composition and the membership to be more diverse and inclusive. And you'll see that we've addressed that by incorporating 5 members of the public at large, with preference given to members of the Indigenous community, individuals with lived or living experience of homelessness, youth, veterans, and members of the 2S LGBTQ+ community. We also did an engagement process through a Get Involved page, the city's Get Involved page. There was limited response back through that, as well as we did a hard copy of a survey out to our funded service agencies and other service agencies as well, I should say, to get feedback from all individuals within the sector. There was limited feedback through the engagement, with some of the responses relating more to more systemic related matters that the city responded to directly. So that's the first section of the report. The second section of the report is related to the Honoraria pilot program. And I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Mohammed Hassan, who will address that part of the report for you.
Thank you, Mitchell, and Madam Chair, through you. The second part of the report talks about addressing one of the biggest barrier in having the people with lived or living experience on this committee. So for that, we did some current practice survey with community partners and municipalities, and some of the major highlights that we noticed that Family and Children Services of Frontenac, Lennox, and Eddington and KFLA Community Drug Strategy has a model for offering honorarium to such committees, and also in terms of municipalities, City of Toronto, Dufferin County, Region of Waterloo, and has a very clear model that offers honorarium to members of public sitting on these committees. And then during this survey, we came across some responses from several regional partners and municipalities who have no policy or process, but their staff is interested in learning from what City of Kingston recommendation would be once it's approved. The list of such municipalities is Town of Newmarket, Regional Municipality of Durham, Niagara Region, City of Vaughan, City of London. So in terms of the financial impact of Honorarium pilot program, the estimated maximum total cost for this will be $5,000 gross for the Honorarium for the Housing and Homelessness Advisory Committee pilot project. And it will come from the Housing and Social Service 2022 operating budget. That's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. And Ms. Nordegraf, I see you also would like to contribute.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to add, I think, an important piece as well, that we obviously have for both the terms of reference updates and the pilot honoraria, which actually was a motion from council back in June 2022 to review this. So we're coming back to the committee first, and then obviously hopefully through our education, community policies, and council to get approval for this first pilot. We also were able to bring this forward and discuss both components with the newly started Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Committee back in December, to also get their feedback on both components. And both areas were received positively by the EDI committee. and actually we're very, very much supportive of this approach. And we're, again, that's my interpretation. We're happy to see also the kind of diverse membership for the Housing and Homelessness Committee, and also the opportunity to start with looking at an honorarium to really remove some of the barriers for members of the public to participate in committees such as these. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Okay, so that's great. Thank you for the introduction, and I know we've all received the reports. So I will call on all of our committee members who wish to ask a question or to make a comment. Following that, if there are any members of the public who are present with us, then each member of the public can speak up to 5 minutes. All questions would be answered at the very end of the public questions and comments section of this business item. And just to note that questions and comments are to relate to the business item on the agenda. So I will now open it up to our committee members who wish to ask a question or have any comments. But if our committee will permit me, normally I wait and I go at the very end, but I would like to just kick this off, being that I was on this working group together with the others. Thank you, everybody who did take part in that. I really appreciate it. One thing that I had noticed is that when we decided to increase the number of meetings per year, we had actually sort of set aside specific designated meetings for 2 of those meetings. One of them that I will, following this, I believe I will request an amendment to Exhibit A. And that also, by saying that, and I will get to this a little bit more, but by saying that, Councillor Doherty, I may need you to then step in with chair duties while I do so. But so for those additional meetings, one of them in particular was to bring service providers, for example, home-based housing, Angwanada, Dawn House, Lily's Place, different services who are specifically within the housing and homelessness sector together to be able to present to this committee, and knowing that staff is present as well, for 5 minutes each, and that would be one meeting where we do that. So it's not spread out over multiple meetings. It would be one meeting where that's the specific function, is an increase in communication, sort of, promoting that synergy and really getting a chance to hear directly from those who are working within this sector. So that was really important to me. This committee had actually done a meeting like this in person several years ago. It was several years ago now. I mean, we've been in the pandemic for how long, but it was in person at City Hall, and it was a real pleasure to do that meeting. And our working group had decided that was a great idea, and we wanted for one of those meetings to be specifically about that. I know that it was left off. I know the reasons why it was left off of of this main exhibit, and I'm also happy to immediately defer to Mr. Grange or Ms. Nordegraaff or whoever wants to speak to that more. But I would like to see it on. I think it's important that these organizations know that we recognize and value their input, and that they know that this is set, that they will have this opportunity every year. So that's where I'm coming from with that. And so I guess my question would be, though I know the answer, I'm not really able to properly, I think, describe it in the way that those from staff can, but why that might have been left off. And I do have later an amendment to put forward as a motion, should this committee feel so. Mr. Grange, if you would like to speak to that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. So in having discussions just with the clerk's office, and due to the nature of what's being requested, it was felt that having the 6 meetings, or the bi-monthly meetings, was sufficient for the wording in terms of what's to be placed into the terms of reference as the mandate. And then by inviting others, like when we set the agenda for, when the committee sets the agenda for upcoming meetings, at that point, you can then make the determination that it's going to be for the purpose of inviting organizations to that upcoming meeting. But I understand your point as well. And that's just kind of the rationale as to why it wasn't included. And I'll leave it with the committee to decide on what direction to move forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grange. That's great. And I understand why it was not put in. I think it's really critical over this time that those who are investing so much energy and so much passion and so much heart, that they know they will absolutely have this meeting every year, that they can, bring forward anything they're looking to, what the successes they're having or the difficulties they're facing. Are they experiencing a shortage of donations, or is demand exceeding what they are able to supply, and so on. So thank you for that. And we'll come back to it. I will now put it over to the rest of my committee for any questions or comments in relation to either of those items. And Councillor Neal, I think I saw your hand. And then Ms. Everett will go following Councillor Neal.
Thank you. I just wanted to make the point that unless they've changed the terms of reference for committees, it's always been my understanding that at the call of the chair, a special meeting can be established. And so I don't think we've changed those terms of reference for committees. So, and I applaud your recommendation, and I really think having it as a distinct meeting and inviting all of the service groups. We now have a kind of a warming center. We have other things that are going on beyond just shelters. So it would be good to be able to include all of them. And I just had one very quick question for Mr. Grange. Sorry, Ms. Everett, I see your hand is up, but it's a very quick question, if I might. I think that the idea of encouraging all of our community to become active in committees is a really good idea. And so I hope that this is a kind of pilot for other committees. I know I'm on arts and the Arts Advisory Committee, and there are artists that I've approached about, you should join this committee, and they have issues with childcare, transportation, things like that. So it would be really good if we could address those things for other committees as well.
I think I see Mr. Hassan's hand raised. I know we were going over to Ms. Everett following that, but Mr. Hassan, were you looking to respond to Councillor Neal's question?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair, through you. Councillor Neal, if we refer to the recommendation of Honorarium pilot project, the second point in the staff recommendation is that City Council will direct staff to review this honorarium process and explore the possibility of incorporating the same for other advisory committees and boards at the City of Kingston. So definitely there is going to be a second step to it. This is just the pilot.
I appreciate that. Do you have any idea of the timeline for when that might happen? And if it needs a motion of council?
I see Ruth Nordegraaf's hand up, so I'll give the floor to her.
Thank you. And Councillor Neal, the pilots, we are proposing this to be a year. So we have a good understanding of some of the experiences. Again, this is really the focus on housing and homelessness is really coming in kind of responding to council's motion back in June of 2021, and that was specifically worded around kind of the unhoused or homelessness or living experience precariously housed individual. again, it definitely like, and that, so that's why we are starting with this committee, and kind of using that. Obviously, there are other considerations. I know the clerk's office obviously would be very much involved in this, but it's been a really interesting journey to review and see what other cities are doing. But the fact that we're specifically starting with housing and homelessness is because it's kind of in response to the motion back in June. You might recall that there were also a few Queen's students that did a presentation to council to also share some of their ideas and findings. So we're actually kind of really excited to start with the Housing and Homelessness Committee and really use it as an opportunity to learn and kind of see what works and what doesn't work. And it's interesting that other cities are watching us as well, to see what we're learning. So that's just kind of to add some context. We're definitely excited about bringing this back with our thoughts to council.
I fully appreciate and support this initiative. I just think it's like all good ideas, it's worth sharing if it helps other committees as well. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Good points. Ms. Everett, if you'd like to speak.
Thank you. And I just wanted to comment on your point, Madam Chair, as well around, I think that, you know, service providers are part of that lived experience as well. And, you know, they are on the front line, and it's really important that we hear their voice. So I guess my comment, and it's my understanding this these new terms of reference were vetted through the EDI committee as well. And if there were, you know, any concerns brought up, by the way, I just want to say, I think everyone did a fabulous job. I think that we're really on the right track. And I think the voice of lived or in living experience is very important. I guess my question is, you know, when I first started on this committee, it's very intimidating because it's through city council. It's, you know, we're recorded. There's very proper ways to kind of, you know, I've sat on many committees and you just can't kind of speak up and share. So I just know, you know, this is a very westernized approach to how we get information from people. And I wonder if those conversations happened at the EDI level around, you know, if this isn't working, maybe it's not maybe it's the system that has to change rather than how we capture those voice of youth. So I'm just wondering, my first question, I have another one too, but I'll see if Ruth wants to answer that one, because that's kind of my first question.
Thank you so much. And through you, Madam Chair, Tara, that's a really good comment. Actually was brought forward at the EDI committee as well. And obviously, you know, I'm the Director of Housing and Social Services. I'm not the city clerk, so I don't want to speak for the clerk's office. But we definitely are, and I think that was the same kind of piece brought forward. And I believe actually the city clerk or deputy city clerk responded to that as well, that there is a much broader conversation around onboarding, you know, feeling, you know, safe and supported in these kind of intimidating roles as well. I'm not going to say that we have all the solutions there, but it's not just the honoraria that's going to help people to feel that they can participate. There's definitely more. I know the fact that, we'll be quite honest, the fact that as a corporation, we obviously have just, you know, initiated our EDI office with Mohammed and Vanessa. And I think as a corporation, we're doing a lot of things internally to ask ourselves those questions. On the housing and homelessness side, as you might see or recall, with the 60+ recommendations that came out of the housing and the homelessness system review, this is not just city committees. We also need to really look at how do we continue to engage with clients with lived experience and make that safe, supportive, and respectful. So again, I just want to respond, like, we don't have the answers, but it's definitely been something that has raised at EDI. And I don't know if Mohammed wants to add a few things, but I definitely know that that's something that we're looking at more holistically across the corporation.
And, sorry, and I'll just add, my second kind of part of the question was around how to engage the recruitment in that process. Has there been any of that conversation happening?
Madam Chair, through you, that is a very good question. And there was another report around recruitment that was brought forward at EDI committee with City Clerk's office. And in that report, the discussion was how recruitment process can be more accessible and how we can address the areas around how we are advertising these positions and what are some of the barriers around the outreach. So that was another report that was that went to EDI committee, and there was a discussion. I also want to reiterate what Director Nordegraf just mentioned, that this is just the first step in the changing a system that has a lot of good things as well as some barriers that needs to be addressed. So I'm really excited and looking forward to how together all of us as staff as well as other aspects of this corporation can create a systemic change for City of Kingston. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It is beautiful. Ms. Creek, please go ahead. I can't hear you yet. You're still on mute. The button would be likely towards the left bottom side of your screen.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, I just wanted to reiterate as well that we definitely need to involve the service providers. Perhaps we could have 5 meetings and make the sixth one for the providers, but it definitely needs to be included. That's it.
Thank you. Were there any other questions or comments from our committee? Councillor Doherty, please go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. I just want to make a suggestion just for the wording of the report. I think it would be helpful. I guess I'm just thinking make sure that we get this through council, and the honorarium where it states, the bullet point where it states that people will be paid $100 for the meetings. I wonder if above that it could be included, recognizing that time is spent on preparing for meetings and reading reports, just so that it creates a bit of context what that $100 is for, because it's not just for the meetings. Sometimes we read quite lengthy reports too, so I think it's important to recognize the work and effort that goes into these meetings beforehand and actually in between meetings as well. So that was just one comment, not a question. And the other comment is the chair's suggestion to have that regular meeting for the service providers. Yeah, we had that discussion in our group. And I also agree that it's important, that it would be helpful if there's a designated meeting time, like the second or third or whatever meeting, because that gives service providers also a chance to prepare. They know that every year around a certain time that they will be presenting. And the public will also be able to hear what the service providers are doing. So I think I remember that meeting that we had in City Hall around the horseshoe, and people came up and they had a presentation, slide presentation. It was really helpful for everyone, for committee members as well as for the public. So I look forward to seeing your amendment, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Were there any other comments or questions from our committee before I reach out to public? Okay, Ms. Nordegraff, do we have anybody now with us from the public?
Madam Chair, if I could just step in, we don't actually have any members of the public with us at this time, so we can continue forward.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, so with that in mind, that was our business item. So I am going to move for this amendment, which means I'm going to now hand over the chair duties for, oh, sorry, go ahead, Ms. Fawcett.
That's right. Thank you, Madam Chair. And through you, just before we get into any amendments, we do have to move and second it to place it on the floor. So while you are still chair, if you'd like to do that, and then you could pass off the chair to introduce your amendment.
Okay, sorry, I thought the amendment would have to start before that, but perfect. So as you see them, could I have a first? Thank you. I see Ms. McCarty and then Ms. Doherty, or Councillor Doherty. Okay, so then before I go forward and ask for all in favor, is this now when I, Ms. Fawcett, when I would send things over, or go ahead and finalize it?
No, that's okay. If you'd like to go ahead and hand over the chair, then you can introduce your amendment so that it can be considered.
Perfect. Over to you, Councillor Doherty.
I recognize you.
Thank you. Okay, so the amendment would be that Exhibit A to report HHC 22004 be amended to add the following under schedule of meetings. After this committee will meet bi-monthly. One regular meeting of the committee should be for the purpose of bringing together organizations that specifically provide support to the housing and homelessness sector, including but not limited to home-based housing, Dawn House, and Angwanada, to make presentations to the committee. So I have moved as such, and I'll leave it to you, Councillor Doherty.
Thank you. Through you, do you have a seconder? Would somebody like to volunteer to second that?
I'll second that.
Okay, with Mayor Smith, and thank you for that. Any questions? Seeing none. Oh, Mr. Clark.
I generally support the amendment. I think it's a good idea. I'm a little queasy about naming organizations, particularly when it's such a narrow list of organizations. For instance, there's no indication in that list of people who provide services to the county. And there's probably a list of organizations that provide services within the community that's about 3 or 4 times as long. The Integrated Care Hub leaps to mind, for instance. So you know, I think we need to be cautious about laundry lists of organizations.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. And Ms. Collier, did you want to respond to that?
Yes, sorry, it was not meant to be whatsoever a comprehensive list. It's only to note, not limited to, so that it identifies what we mean when we say those that are in the housing and homelessness sector. Those are some that had been with us for our in-person version of that meeting several years ago. And so it was just to note some to give an example of the types of organizations, but there are several, and we would be reaching out to several. That is not a comprehensive idea of who would be invited to speak. It would be considerably a longer list. Yeah.
Ms. Collier, would you like to perhaps move a friendly amendment to include such as?
So do you to change it
I don't
to,
have the wording in front of me. We don't have the wording in front of us anymore, but perhaps you could move a friendly amendment to address that concern.
it does note including but not limited to home-based housing, Dawn House and Anguanada. Those were three that I had put forward as an example. Because they do different things, but again within that housing and homelessness sector. So is the suggestion then, Mr. Clark, that it not say including but not limited to, and just remove them?
Well, I guess from my point of view, Madam Chair, I wouldn't have any there. One could debate that the integrated care hub, the addictions and mental health, and the Kingston Health Sciences Center are equally as important as people providing roofs over people's heads, and leave us not forget John Howard and Elizabeth Fry. So I think that just I think the intent of the amendment is a good one. My preference would just be to leave the names off.
Okay, so it would read then, one regular meeting of the committee should be for the purpose of bringing together organizations that specifically provide support to the housing and homelessness sector to make presentations to the committee. Great. Thank you. So I will change my motion to be as such. I think they're all equally important as well. This was just an example. So if I could have a seconder for this modified motion. Oh, sorry, I don't think I'm allowed to ask that. I'm not sure.
Okay, thanks for that. For trying to ask that question. But so, Madam Clerk, do you want to actually walk us through that really quickly? Could it be a friendly amendment?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, and through you. So it would, technically speaking, it should be where the amendment would technically be voted down and then a new amendment would be introduced that has the correct wording. However, given that it is very clear what the intention is and that we are removing just a subsection of that, if you could just give me a moment to amend that so that we can put it up on the screen, and then we should be able to move forward. So if you could just give me one moment and we'll put it back up on the screen to make sure that we have it right.
Clerks just don't like friendly amendments.
That looks great. Councillor Doherty, you are muted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I had the dog barking earlier, so I muted myself. So thanks. Mayor Smith, are you okay to second? The seconder is okay with a friendly amendment as well?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. So any comments with on the amended, friendly amended motion in front of us? Seeing none, I think we might be ready to vote. Can I please have a show of hands on the motion to amend? Great. Passed unanimously, and I'll hand over the chair to Ms. Collier.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone. That's lovely. So we will move forward. Next, we have motions, which after that, good thing, there's none on our agenda.
Sorry, Madam Chair, to
Yeah.
interrupt. I do apologize. We still do need to go back to the original motion and approve it all as amended. So we'll need, unless there's any further comments from the committee or any further amendments, you could call the question.
Absolutely. So we just want to make absolutely certain here that we are approving everything fully and as amended. And if I could please have a first for that. Thank you, Ms. McCarty. And then I see Ms. White for a second. And if I could have a show of hands, all in favor. Thank you. So that carries unanimously. And now I think we're good to move forward with no further motions. So we'll go over number 8 to number 9, notices of motion. Again, there were no notices of motion. 10 other business. There was no other business noted during our agenda. I always make it a habit of asking if anybody has any other business. Perfect. So we'll move forward then through correspondence. There was none included. So the date of our next meeting will be on March the 10th, Thursday, March the 10th at 1 p.m. And we will move forward to adjournment. If I could have a first, please. Thank you, Councillor Neal. And a second, I think I saw Ms. White second. And if I could see all hands in favor. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye, everyone.